Hey guys, what's up? It's Schla. Welcoming back to another episode of Car Rides with Schla. Today was another high octane day, although I didn't really feel that the content of my talks was as high. And then there are some things now that are sort of, I don't even know, keeping me feeling a bit frazzled is probably a good word to describe it, a bit puzzled about things and not knowing exactly where to go from here. But one thing's for sure, there's going to be another phone added to the stack of phones that I have on me. It basically everywhere I go, I bring a lot with me for these various different, I have this microphone, now I have my other phone is like the alternate transcriber. There's so many different phones I have and uses for them. My next possession is definitely going to be the Air. That's really the main thing that I'd like to add to my collection, but who knows if I actually will or not. Just remembering, maybe gas tomorrow morning, maybe not. I kind of like the idea of pushing it, as that's what I've been doing recently. I've been pushing getting gas, which I think is a little bit better probably. Although, yeah, maybe I don't want to. Maybe I will get it. No, it's just too early. It's going to have to be. Yeah, that's when it's going to have to be. So probably not tomorrow, probably the day after is when I will get gas. Anyways, the thing I want to talk about is something I may not have touched on yet on record. And it's this idea about the nature of the present day and its comparison to how things were, and how, in my opinion, things seem to be quite a bit better in the past, if that makes any sense. And I'm pretty firm in my belief on that. And what I mean is the significance of humans, the significance of people and the people we are around, and how, pretty consistently I remember people and think of them fairly fondly, and it doesn't really seem like there's much evidence that other people are doing the same, which is a little bit sad and frustrating because I really remember people. And you could say that I get attached to everybody I meet, but I don't know if there's really anything wrong or bad about that. I almost feel like we're conditioned to not get attached to anything. And that to me seems so much less healthy. I guess in this day and age, it's probably unhealthy that I have the attachments that I do. But I'm not sure it's really a bad thing. And the point I commonly make is this point about how society used to be, how, you would get meat from the local butcher and you would get bread from the local bakery. And this is why capitalism makes life easier, because now you don't have to do a million things by yourself. You don't have to learn how to fix your refrigerator because somebody else can do that for you. And it makes life easier. Capitalism made life much easier. And now we get to this point where we're reaching this really far and deep end game of that, where things are no longer easier. They're not. It's not easier anymore. Now these goods and services have been hijacked by the powers that be. And so instead of, and they've been hijacked by the powers that be, so that instead of any type of reasonable or making life easier, life is actually harder now. Because now you go to the grocery store and it's a different grumpy underpaid worker every single week that you don't know and you never will know, and it's just like this very frustrating situation that shouldn't be. It shouldn't happen. I don't know. And, as a result, kind of weighs on things. It weighs on society, the way we interact with others and such. And it's very bad, because where you used to have the same familiar faces and you see them on a regular basis and you form a pretty permanent bond. And then if it wasn't the same baker anymore, now it's the baker's son that you see every week to get your loaf of bread. Now it's, you have one cashier to the next. And so, do you really gain anything from this? Are you happier as a result of this hyper-individuality? Likely not. Likely not. And in addition, the person themselves is no longer happy, because now you have some random cashier working for some company who isn't happy, and they're getting underpaid, and it's not even just about the money, it's about, they don't know anybody. And then a couple years later, a job gets slightly better pay, and then they just have to ditch this one and go to the next one, because that's the world we live in now, where it's completely devoid of any good feeling, consistent and stable life. And it's just become just completely overrun. Wow, that was really confusing. I was really trying to let someone go and they just weren't going. I noticed that happens quite often. They have a lot of time to go and they don't. I'm probably not even doing the best I've explained to this, but I thought of this so long ago. And I'm probably not the only person to bring it up, but I did think of it pretty much on my own, and this was so many years ago. And it's so sad to kind of see and be aware of just how nothing has changed. We're still on the bad trajectory. And I've been talking about this stuff and mentioning it to people, and a lot of times, I never thought of that. It's weird. It's not good. It's definitely not good. And so, yeah, that brings us to where we are now. And there's been people at my job that I know, and even though I'm not a sociable person, there's still a lot of meaning in my interactions with any humans. Well, I can be sociable in certain settings. Particularly online, can be quite extroverted, but in real life, I'm typically not. That's just how it works. I think there's just differences in the digital realm, and I feel better suited for that realm and that discourse. Always have been. And so, I remember people a lot. I think about people a lot. And it's very upsetting that things change. And I know you could argue maybe it's childish. Maybe, I should just get with the times and deal with it. But I don't really feel that that is my purpose. Think that there's something significant to me caring as much as I do about these things, and that shouldn't be taken for granted. Again, it's very significant that I think in the way I do and whatnot. And so the other issue with the long-term capitalism now is a lot of people get really excited about these coupons and % off if you download the rewards app and everything. But it's really all some kind of scam and scheme, because even when credit cards came onto the scene, there's effectively a 3% tax on every transaction that now just goes to a middleman, being the credit card company. And sure, you might get some tiny rewards, but everybody else now, the price has to be slightly higher to adjust for the loss that the business now occurs from people using credit cards. So if I buy something from Walmart and it's $100, the credit card fee is going to be tacking on $3 to that Walmart has to pay. So it cuts into their profit slightly, and it raises the price of things a little bit. It's not major, but now you basically have it so the brainiacs who do all this number crunching and credit card optimization get ahead, which is probably me and I'd assume about 15% of the population. Most people may just have a random credit card that they don't really, But yes, a small percentage gets a small benefit, but in the grand scheme of things, all the price gets higher. It's the same thing with buy now, pay later stuff like Klarna, and is it called Afterpay? I thought it was called something else, and I'm not really a fan of how I'm blanking on it right now. But there's the other one. I don't think it's called Afterpay, but I guess maybe it is. But I don't know. It's purple. Klarna's pink. The other one's purple, and I can't remember it. But these things are actually even more expensive than credit card companies. They usually tack on a 6% extra fee to the business. And again, this makes the cost of everybody go up. That's what it does. It makes everybody's cost increase, which is like really weird. It's weird to have that. Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's not weird, it's bad, because again, now it's making it so somebody just paying directly in cash is helping the business, but they're getting no reward for doing that. Whereas the people who are using credit cards, it's slightly selfish. Now, I mean, I just do it because I figure I'm not wealthy, and, my brain is like into that kind of stuff. But you see how I can understand why the system probably shouldn't be this way. It's not really that fair to people. So, I don't know. I just think it's like very weird in general. And it's due to ignorance, right? Nobody really understands a lot of this stuff, and so it just happens. It just happens, and that is what it is, I guess. But like, you can't really do much about it. Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to get this screenshot, but it's going to be a little tricky to do while driving, of course. Shouldn't be recording myself saying that, but it doesn't really matter. Anyways. So, yeah, I mean, that brings us to this modern iteration of capitalism, which now it's basically the same difference. Like, we live within a capitalist system, but we don't have the rewards. We don't have any of the benefits of living in a capitalist system. Now, because of how bad the cost of living has become, it's the same difference. It's now we have to basically fend for ourselves and like learn how to fix our cars ourselves because we can't afford to pay the mechanic anymore, which comes with its own set of issues, really. It really comes with its own set of problems, because then, the mechanic gets less money, and it's not like they have it easy necessarily. So something is just obviously failing, and I think it pushes us to really have to think about these things, about, what kind of features do we need to start to get rid of in cars to make them cheaper? In what ways have car companies just misused resources? And this is when you get into like the free market having a lot of problems, because you should have had some kind of regulation to prevent car companies from adding all this extra sensor junk in tech, because it's just not useful at all. At least it's not going to be sustainable. It's just not going to be sustainable. So there's something to that. I think there's something to what's going on. But you really wonder what the fallout's going to be. You really do wonder. I'm kind of surprised more people don't revolt. I think it's just because people are very intoxicated still. We have screens, and we have such good screens for so cheap. Even now, it's like people in pretty deep poverty could easily get their hands on a pretty great phone and become addicted. And I think it probably leads to less of a chance of a political uprising, truthfully. Because you're just not... I know that social media, it causes some people, like, yes, since we all have cameras, we can share things that before we wouldn't have been able to share. So people make the argument that, actually social media is used as a way to drum up more support. But I don't believe that. And I see in human behavior that there isn't much evidence that, like, technology is a sedative. I think that's how you would say it. I think. It sedates people. It makes people somewhat aware of bad things, but it merely, I don't know how to say that word. I think it's merely becomes a source of entertainment. I mean, people don't actually get out there and do anything. And I think in the past, even though there was TV, there was so much more of an imperative for people to really be grounded in reality, realize that there were things to protest or to be kept on top of, and do them. Because, yeah, I mean, television was distracting, but the screens back then were horrible. It was like black and white for a while. Before that, it was just radio. I mean, these forms of entertainment can't hold a candle to what we have now. And so it's no surprise that things have gotten worse. And what came first, the chicken or the egg? Whose fault is it? The consumer for giving into it, or the companies for putting this stuff out when there's really not much of a reason, or at least it should have been restricted. It shouldn't have been free market. In terms of, yeah, maybe we can have smartphones, but maybe you're not allowed to use them for entertainment. I don't know. But of course, humans seek freedom and they find out ways to do things best, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame. I don't feel very calm right now. I kind of feel overwhelmed by things, I think. But I think trying to venture more into that post-property concept, I think should be fairly therapeutic for me, because there's so much anxiety and stress in my life about money because of how hyper aware I am of what's to come. But again, I have a feeling that everything could get seized anyway, because there's going to be so many people who are just not, and it already is, and society is going to have to clean up what's going on. Well, actually it's not. I think a lot of older people are probably just being selfish and don't really care very much, because based on a lot of the impression I glean, I mean, I'm not certain how things actually are, but I get the gist that there are lots of adults that don't really care that there are young people slipping through the cracks, or that there are young people where there's not really a lot of hope for us. And meanwhile, they have such an advantage in terms of income, and more importantly than income, it's mental state. Older people are still just multitudes better off mentally than the youth has been. I mean, so many young people's brains have just been completely destroyed, and nobody's really being accountable to that. And I think that's pretty sad, because a lot of it is from screen use and tech use, and there's a mixture of blame for that. It's partially parents' negligence, but it's also the companies for, again, putting this stuff out and likely understanding what the consequences to society, likely having a comprehension of the consequences that would come. And they still put them out anyway, and none of these companies have to be accountable at all. So I'm still of the belief that there's some kind of great reset that is intentionally planned, and I think that's a pretty commonly held belief, and we're really seeing the beginning of it. There's going to be some kind of a major reshaping in society where everything's tracked and quantified, and don't really see how things aren't going to end up that way at this rate. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, what else is there to say about that? Yeah, I don't know how this is coming. Like I said during one of my walks today, it's strange. Like when I speak, I don't feel in control. I feel like everything just comes to me and it's very automatic. And then at this point, it's a compulsion, because I would be so bored if I didn't speak. And it's like, I'm spending a lot of time recording now, and it's just becoming a thing I do. I don't know if it's a mania or not. It doesn't feel manic completely, but the fact that this show has sustained this long is very crazy for me. I mean, I know maybe the effort is not where it should be. I could do more to, kind of figure things out or optimize the show a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, that the truth is, I've never stuck with anything this long. I don't think. I've never poured as much effort and still fought through it even when I didn't want to. I tend to really have that problem where I bounce around passions, and I just don't know that I was finding my fit, and then I ultimately should have been talking the whole time, but I just wasn't. I was making music, thinking, really into that, obviously, because it's a little cooler. to be a musician than to just talk, but I'm realizing it's it's not music. I mean, maybe I don't, like I said, I had some motivation a couple months ago to try to fight through that and like still have music as a core of my just me. And I mean, I'll probably always be casually into music. Maybe someday I'll be an artist. Who knows? But yeah, it was just misalignment. And again, I think a lot of people in my life talking down on me, not listening to me when, in the long run, I really would think about things a lot more than other people would. And so it's been very frustrating. I guess that was from my family. It was from people I was friends with. I wasn't popular in school. So then you're made to think that you're not good at talking or socializing. And there's just a lot. There's definitely a lot to that. But I guess that's the moral of this episode is I'm fairly sentimental about people, and I think I remember and think about people really often, and I'm very upset when people are in my life and then they're out, especially because I feel like I don't really hold grudges against people that much. Now, granted, I do like to hold people accountable, and I think that there's a lot of people who have done things to me and just like completely gotten away with it, and I question the world, and I think in the future everything's going to be chronicled and tracked, and then their social score would tank or whatever for the behavior that they gave me. And yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time and kind of what I'm dealing with at this rate, I think is really the truth of that situation. But it is what it is. I think at the same time, it's like, what can be done about this stuff? I don't know, I completely lost track of what I was saying. Like I said, since it's so automatic, a lot of times it's difficult for me to, I come in and out of these like rants. I think something I was thinking about today though is I'm really not very spiritual anymore, and I think that's a little bit sad. I used to be pretty deeply spiritual, and I remember what I was saying. Sorry. Yeah, and I really do think a lot of people have just don't act right, and they need some kind of consequence, but they don't end up getting it because ultimately a lot of people get away with stuff all the time, especially socially speaking, because there's not really any rules when it comes to social. It's usually just private, and it's just, it is what it is. And it's kind of frustrated me that a lot of people are rude and they never really learn, or nothing really happens to them. And I just don't really think that's very good. But what I'm saying is, it's hardly ever the case that, like, I think I'm so forgiving. I have so much patience, but it just feels like people's etiquette it's so bad, and then people's like intentions are also really selfish and bad. And I always give people the benefit of the doubt, and then I always just end up getting like treated poorly. I have a lot of patience giving the person the benefit of the doubt, and then they just end up like disappearing anyway. Like, even though I was the one who was put through a lot. And so I've been through that so many times, and yet I still am very forgiving of people. I don't think I've ever blocked anybody. I don't think I've ever stopped talking to anybody. Isn't that interesting? Now, I guess that means that I'm too kind, and there's probably certain people I just should have never talked to. But that's not how I am. I always love people, and I love talking to people, and it's very strange and sad that things turn out the way they have. But like I said, there could be some kind of fate to it. There's a lot going on now that I don't really know that we understand very well. And again, like I said, society could change in a pretty big way. So it all depends. We'll have to see where things go from here. But at the end of the day, I think while my sentimentality is out of place, I don't think it's wrong. I think that it's really how people should act. But there's so much just nonsense and junk, and other people don't care. There's so much nihilism. And it's very frustrating to navigate that. And I've seen it. But I can't remember what was my culminating point going to be. Because I know I was going to mention that, but there had to have been something else. Yeah, I don't know, but I'll say this much. The microphone's a very good listener. And I'm just so confused why I didn't end up pursuing this sooner in my life. Because it's super important. Super good. You know? It's so therapeutic for me to have these conversations with myself. It feels good. And it's compulsive at this point because I don't know if it's an obsessive thing. It probably is, but I don't know what else to, like, there's nothing else that's really as fun. Like, listening to music is fine, but that's not really what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't know. Just not. So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I just can't fathom how long this is really going to last, because it just seems like I'm at an insane momentum right now. It's just like, how do you even... wow. You know, there's not really too much else to it. But it's definitely, I don't know, I guess the future's getting better for me. But it's kind of sickening as well. I really wish, well, and I say that, I wish I could have cherished while I had when I had it, but then that would imply with the present as well. So I've come to this conclusion before. I should probably just be happy for what I have now anyway. Just hold on to what I can while I can. And I guess I have to accept that we live in a world where, again, sentimentality is not, it's not understood, it's not appreciated, and if anything, sometimes I think people don't like it. People think I'm too heavy or something. But again, how is this an outlet? You know, and it's not AI. It's not even AI. It's just recording and creating words. You know, like I didn't feed any of the first day it was pretty cool, and I'm not against it. I think it's a super fun idea. I was feeding the transcripts into GPT just to see what GPT would say. And it's very cool when you're able to process things like that. I don't know, and get that kind of insight and summary and reflection on what you're trying to convey and all that. I think it's super cool. And yeah. But today I just didn't even, I don't know. Like, I didn't need to do that. I was happy to just talk. But then again, also, I didn't think it was much substance. I think it was almost just recording to have like a diary or something, like just to have a log of what I was thinking about on this specific day. It wasn't groundbreaking ideas or new philosophies. And I'm thinking that that's okay. You know, it's okay to not have to constantly be coming up with like a genius idea, you know. I think it's pretty common for me to feel that way, where it's like, you know, I'm really trying to push and push and push and reach some kind of new understanding and be productive and all this stuff, but it's ultimately not all that necessary. And I think it's good to just use words in a downtime kind of fashion as well, honestly. There's nothing really wrong with that, and definitely something I'm trying to work on. Anyways, it's been schla, but now it's time to buy schla. So, see ya schla.